Alrighty, welcome back, you guys. This will be the October recap. It is November 1st. I'm recording this, and I'm pretty satisfied with October. Pretty good month, pretty solid month. I think I mentioned this last month where I only made 5,400 was that the summer months, or not the summer months, the fall months are the slowest, and that's typically been the case for me and my trading performance. But in October, making $43,500, like that's certainly not my average month, at least in fall months, right? I didn't have expectations for what I was going to make, but I was fully prepared to face another difficult month like September was. But luckily that we didn't have to deal with that, and October ended up being pretty solid. So very happy with that. And so like always, we're going to go through all the main trades, wins and losses. But this month is a little bit unique where it was still fall trading in that there was much lesser plays, but there was good enough plays to execute on, which allowed me to really come out with this month. It looks like I've traded pretty much most of my days, but in terms of how many trades I took very less trades. Usually I average between like 60, 70 trades a month. This time I only traded, I think, like 40 or 50. So less trades, but was still pretty efficient in coming out with a great month. So let's jump right into it. The first couple trades were actually my worst trades of the month. OPTT was a difficult one. So being this awesome runner from $1 up to $3, 350 in 3 days. And so I'm looking, of course, as always, for the backside. So if we go into the intraday here, we spiked pretty hard in after hours here, and even into the pre-market. Now, when we are very extended, right? When a runner is very extended and it gaps up large, I always think to myself, will this have the strength to maintain this gap up, or will it fail? Right? Will it have another big, huge green day on the daily chart, or will it just gap up huge and then fall off? And coming out of the open on OPTT, when we had this huge spike and then a major stuff, I was pretty much convinced at that point that like a lot of longs got bagged, a lot of shorts just got squeezed, and then it just died on them. And so I'm thinking, okay, this will probably be a ticker that fades. And I was somewhat right. I do have my executions here, OPTT. So into this bounce, right, into this main bounce, first bounce really, I was getting short. And so when we start fading, I'm like, awesome. Like we just made a new low a day right here. This should be work really well. Then we come back, right? And in my executions, I cover it. I'm like, this is acting very choppy. It's not acting how I want it to. And then again, we fail. And so I'm thinking, at this point, I'm a little bit flustered. At this point, I watched, well over $1,000 in profit go away immediately, and we failed again. So I'm like, you know what? Let me give it one more shot. And as you can see, we go higher. And then just looking at this intraday, like it's just very choppy, right? All in general, even from this larger trend to this larger fade, with much more choppiness in between each main move. So it just wasn't really good setup. Like this first attempt was a setup that I have traded before. This first attempt to try to catch a fade was a move I look for. But then reshorting here, right? Reshorting into the second fail, I don't, there's ways I look at patterns and how I've seen them play out and what I look for. And me reshorting here, it just isn't a setup anymore for me. Like after seeing this price action and reshorting here, I don't know where this is going to go. And so kind of retaking that short and then having to cover. Once I did cover, I was like, Kyle, that wasn't a good trade. If that wasn't a trade I shouldn't have even took. After it failed to really fade and squeeze back the first time should have been enough for me. And so unfortunately, after taking two losses like that, I did end up taking like a $1,700 loss. I believe that's my biggest loss on the month. Yeah, this one right here. So that was really difficult. But again, not the worst thing in the world. It was two losses. It wasn't like just one big loss. It was just two combined into one on the same play. So yeah, that sucks. And then of course, we faded the rest of the day. I don't reshort. And the next day, we have a huge gap down and fade. And if you know how I work or how I like to trade these, I just usually don't, because when the close is way up, near $3 and we gap down to 250 and only spike to 270, I really rather not risk 10%. Even if I got a perfect entry at the spike high to get this fade. Now, granted, in hindsight, yes, it would be nice to catch this fade because you catch it over 50 cents downside, but to risk 30 cents to make 50, um, I'm not sure that's a risk reward I want to take, and continuously over and over again. So that one's that one. Next up is WWR. Now this one was probably more difficult than OPTT because OPTT was just one event where I took a dumb trade and then just missed the downside. On WWR, I did the same thing, but like more of an extreme and more of a much more frequently, I should say. So again, $3 up to 14, like a huge runner. And this one was just as choppy as OPTT, if not more. And I really screwed it up. And this is another example of me kind of exhausting myself on the front side, trying to nail a front side move, and having a result in me not being able to focus when the time was correct. And so going into today, similar thesis as OPTT, right? We're gapping up huge. Can we keep going, or are we going to fade after being so extended? And after this huge move, I'm thinking huge move, like huge spike and then fail. I'm like, hell yeah, like this thing just faded. This thing just failed. We should fade pretty hard. And so I do get short. And a couple of these bounces are a little scaring me, but I'm like having trust in it. And we get down all the way to here. And I only cover like a 1/5 of my size at 940 because that was the highs of the previous day, like the low 920s, 930s. And so I covered like a fifth of my size, thinking, there's so many people underwater, like we should be okay. We might have a little bounce, but we should keep fading, and I want to be there for that. And then we just squeeze, right? We squeeze super hard, and I'm thinking, okay, after such a hard square spike like this, we should pull back, and then we do it again. And so at this point, I'm covering for, giving back all my profits. I was up, over $2,000 at this point, down in the 940s, and pretty much results in like a few $100 loss. And that was super frustrating, right? To have both these trades be up, $1-2 grand and then come back and end up taking losses, like that sucks. Again, that's part of the game, like it happens, but it's almost it's more worse feeling than just taking a loss. Like if I was just wrong from the beginning and took a loss, okay, I was wrong, dead wrong. But the fact that I was right and I didn't lock it in, and I didn't really, protect my gains, even though they were unrealized, it sucks. But keep moving forward. I was still prepared to be there for when it really had its first red day, and I thought that was going to be today. And I actually have the execution on this trade saved, where I just got chopped around all day long, and you can see it in the intraday, right? We're down, we're up, we're down, we're up, we're down. It's just all over the place. Not an intraday chart I typically understand or trade well. And if you look here, let's get rid of OPTT. WWR, on that day, it's like I took a small short pre-market, got squeezed, re-entered at the open, was okay not cutting into this spike, really trusting the pattern that I would hold red in the day. And then we squeezed again, back greens. I'm like, okay, cut it for a loss. Then we go back red, we hold red. I'm like, okay, let's short, let's hopefully catch a fade with the first red day and swing overnight. And we come back green again, and I cut it again. And now, a lesson that you guys should have about this particular move or ticker is that me cutting it red green clearly isn't the best risk level because it comes back red all the time. Now, the reason why I agree with that and somewhat disagree is that my thesis on this trade was that I wanted to hold red. I needed to, if I'm going to swing it, I'm going to, because it's from 3 to 14, like I want to, take a few dollars a share on this downside. And the only way I'm going to do that is that I probably swing this trade. And so for me to swing, it's like I have to be up nicely and it has to be red on the day. So the fact that it kept coming back green kept making me think like this is not going to be a swing trade. Unfortunately, it should have been a little bit opposite of that. It should have been like I have a very wide risk and I'm just going to let it play out, and if I did that, that would have worked. That would have been a way better plan because as you can see, we finally gap down the next day. We have a very weak spike. We fade a little more, have this bounce, and then we completely fall apart. And so after taking, losses, after giving back losses on this day and getting chopped around on this day, I did give one last shot, shorting today, and I screwed it up. I just butchered it. I absolutely screwed it up. If we go here, I got short into the spike, great entry, but from these little choppiness spikes into this bounce reminded me, like this, like we're gonna, this action right here, like we're gonna lead to a huge spike back green, and I'm gonna get squeezed again. And unfortunately, these days I stuck to my risk of red green, This day I did not. I thought I was smart trying to avoid it. I thought I was smart, like, let me get out now and avoid a bigger loss. And so, when I cut here thinking the spike's going to send it green, it doesn't. And now the biggest mistake I think of all was not reshorting, was not realizing that it's not going to do that and that I should reshort, because if I had, like, I'm now going to catch multiple dollars a share downside, right? This thing went from 11 down to just sub of 8. Like, that's insane. This is the range I wanted to see. This is the range I thought I would see on this day, And so from unfortunately exhausting myself the prior 2 days, coming in today, I thought it was smart trying to, avoid the previous exhaustion again, and ended up biting me in the ass, right? And I ended up missing multiple dollars of profit. So again, it happens. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's just a good lesson, right? I just can't exhaust myself. I need, on these choppier, more range like tickers, I need to have a much wider risk and a much more patient approach. And I just didn't have that. And so that's a good lesson moving forward for the next time I deal with a ticker like this. Now, coming into my best win of the month was on the 8th, almost $17,000 in profit, was LKNCY. Now, I'm not really going to go over this one because I actually did a video on this 2 weeks ago. This very weekend, like over this weekend or that weekend, I made a video on this. So I will, you'll see a little pop up. I'll put a link in the description. Watch that 15-minute video. I go into this trade in very great detail. And yeah, that normally would be in this recap, but it was such a unique and awesome play that I decided to make a separate video. So go watch that. We keep moving forward. Again, another great runner, similar to LKNCY, was NWBO, being that they're both two OTCs. And this was just a great trader, and it was a very difficult trader for me in these run-ups, right? In these two, if we pull this back here, in these two little run-ups, I traded it very poorly. I didn't take it long very much. I didn't make much very on the long side. And every time I tried to short, I got chopped around because, as you can see, it has red days, but it's not your typical red day, right? It's like a fade. If I really wanted to make a profit, I'd have to swing this for like 5 days to catch these fades. And I just didn't every time. And I ended up taking like either break even to like small losses. And it was super frustrating. But coming into, this run, I remembered how difficult it was trading it short. So when we start, ignore this little wick, it must be like a misprint of data. But once we started breaking out again over this 120 level, it like hits me. I'm like, this was such a difficult like short on these two runs. Like, I should be longing this at this point. Like, I've learned my mistakes from not longing at these prior times and trying to short it. Like, let me just take this long on this breakout. And so if we go into the intraday here, over right this 120 level, right, we break out over one, on this day, but then this next day there's no follow through on that breakout. Then give us one more day of consolidation, and I think, with this gap, I believe there was news, don't quote me on that, but something clearly got the run started again. We broke over 2. I started longing, into this dip as long as we hold 120 or then the low 1 teens, and we start, really, I wouldn't say parabolicing, but we really start getting going. We start speeding up, and I end up selling most of my shares into the 140s push, right, to 150, because 150 was my goal. And I locked in, I think it was like $1,500 or so. And then the fact that we kept holding like this, I then ended up rebuying into the close, sold the gap up, rebought again, and then sold it to this grind for another like 1,500. So I almost made like, I think, $3,000 between this breakout, which is really awesome. And I think do I have my trades here? I think I do. Yeah, NWBO swing, it's right here. So yeah, it's like I'm longing in these dips at 120, selling into that 140 pop, rebuying into the close, end up selling some of the close there, but rebought again, sold the open, rebought again, and then sold a few more times into that grind up. So awesome long trade for me. I typically do not make that much money on the long side. So I was very happy that I did. And then coming into the top day, of the supernova, I'm now looking at it to go short, from a breakout of 120, and we're now over at 250, like a great runner, great supernova. Every single day did not go green, or did not go red. Sorry, it held green every single day. And a really key thing to note is that every single time, every single day, it held its previous highs. So if we look at, this breakout day, it holds the breakout, squeezes, it doesn't squeeze, but the momentum keeps going from the breakout, and we keep to start the run. Next day is the high is what, 150, 160. Into the close, we kind of look weak here, but we hold 150. Okay. Next day we gap up, we don't even test these highs of 172, right? We gap up immediately and then dip to 180 and never even touch those highs. So we keep going. Next day, the high is 209, 210. We have a little bit of double bottom here, but we hold those highs. So again, there's this trend of it's holding the highs, right? And if it holds the highs, it's likely going to keep their trend going. The run's going to keep going. And so going into this day, every day, every single day, I was looking, will it hold the highs? Will it hold the highs? And so when we go into today, we don't. And we gap up to the highs, we quickly fail, and that was a huge trend change, right? That's like big number one. Okay. Number two is, I guess it happened before that. This was this crack. When you have a crack like this and have it being the biggest crack in the run up, really since this day, which wasn't even extended here, it's much more extended here, and we have this first crack. Like that's another sign. We then finally actually go red green for the first time, right? That's a huge sign. We actually end up holding red, right? These little candles here trying to go back green, it actually ends up holding red, and we pull. And like, so all these things coming together, like finally like builds the case of like, we're gonna fail, like we're gonna die. This is gonna be the first red day. And so I think if we look at my executions here, let's see here, NWBO right here. So you see how I'm taking small little starter shorts because it didn't break the highs of 250. I then add when we go red. We then hold red, so I add one more time. You see that little small red candle there. Cover a little bit here on the first dip, and then we really panic. We really get going. And so really happy with my execution on this. I did a small reshort here with smaller size just to catch this last piece of panic. It could have easily not panicked. Like I could have easily double bottomed and then bounced, so I would have had to cut it for a loss. But it did end up panicking, which was nice. So I made a few hundred more dollars there. Reshorted this bounce, and then covered into these dips for a few hundred more dollars. I think I ended up totaling about almost $9,000 on this trade here. So I'm very, very happy with that. Again, between NWBO and LKNCY, I did the math, and like most of my month came from not just the big wins, not just the first big red day shorts, but from just like the long in the breakout, buying some of these dip buys. I believe I bought a little bit here on this dip buy, made some money and flipped it real quick on NWBO. Reshorted a small amount on the second red day, made another like $2,000 there. So it's like these awesome supernova events that pop up are usually my biggest money makers, and they're especially my biggest money makers when we're in a slower market like October and September trading has been in the fall months. Because I added up all my trades from NWBO and LKNCY, and it came out to like 38, 39 grand. So considering my month is almost 44 grand, like 90% of my month has been from these two plays, right? Different multiple setups in the two plays. But when I'm given two awesome supernovas, and I took advantage of them, like that's what happens, right? Most of my month came from that. So that's really, really awesome to see. And that's usually typically the case in a lot of slower fall months, right? You're only going to be given a few great opportunities a month. And it's really important to take advantage of those. And so that's what I did. So I'm very happy with that. I think the last great trade of the month was NNDM. And I'm really happy with this one because this was probably my best listed short, being OPTT and WWR being two terrible listed shorts for me. NNDM was a great first red day that I haven't seen in terms of how it moved with its price action in a very long time, at least in a few months since we were high back in like June and July and April and May. So if we go into the intraday here, I'm like, let's see if this loads. But yeah, just the intraday action of how it had a first red day was super, I wouldn't say pleasing, but like as an experienced trader, you begin to see what intradays you like and what intradays really look best and work best for the setup you're looking for. And NNDM was just an awesome example of that. And so, again, super huge supernova from like $2 all the way up to $6 at this point. We have a huge kind of, I wouldn't say blow off top day, but when we spike from 450 to 6, we're now super extended. And I really, part of me, again, I say this all the time, I'm so bearish, I'm bullish. So the fact that I will eventually short this, I know I want to short this, I wanted this to stay as high as possible. I wanted this to stay in the high fives, maybe even break 6 late day, so that way there would be way more downside the next day. Of course, that didn't happen. We ended up, bouncing a little bit, but really fading into the close. And I wasn't happy with this action, just because all of this selling, like this huge crack, this fade into the close, these are longs getting out. And so these are longs I would prefer to get out on the first red day because that's more selling pressure. on the downside. That's more range for me to potentially make money as a short. And so when I saw this, I just kind of did a little bit disappointed. I was like, that sucks. Like I really wish this happened on the first red day. More importantly, because it's so oversold, not oversold, but because it's sold off so much, part of me thinks there's a lot of longs underwater now. There's a lot of longs who bought up in the high fives who are now in underwater, and part of me thinks like it might gap down, right? If the ticker gaps down too big, like OPTT did, I'm gonna miss this play. I'm just not gonna short it because if it gaps down too much, my risk reward will be off, and I'm not gonna be happy about it. Now, luckily for me, we actually gapped up, which is a gift, which is a huge gift. Closed at like 480. We're gapping up above 5. Like I was stoked. And so you can actually see here, look at the volume. I made this comparison a lot of times in previous videos, and it's a good indicator to tell you a stock is weak. Look how big the volume is on this day when it really squeezes from 450 to 6, and look at the volume out the open on this day. Huge difference, like a massive difference. I mean, this thing, it traded more volume in probably the first hour this day than it probably traded all day on this day. So immediately I noticed that. Immediately I know how weak it was. It didn't morning spike, whereas here I had a huge morning spike. And so I started getting short into these pops. Eventually I started, I think at first I was going to risk like the 540 level. These kind of previous spikes kind of topped out there. And that was kind of a support level in this pre-market. So 540 was a good level. But then once we start failing here and we actually start breaking down, I move my risk to 530. And then we actually go red. And then we fade a little more. And I think I actually have my trades here as well. Let's get rid of NWBO. Yes, NNDM. So again, like I said, I'm shorting these pops, shorting this breakdown. We go red, cover a little bit, cover last few pieces here, and then we bounce back to red green. And again, like NWBO, like I talked about in LKNCY, if you watch my recap that I mentioned, the bounce back to red green is usually also a good short. So I reshorted towards this red green move, and it went sideways for a little bit, and then we actually faded to a new low a day, and so I covered into there. So just very, very good price action. Like I just had a really good read on it. And as you can see here, it's like I'm shorting close to the top, I'm covering close to the bottom. I'm not timing it perfectly. I never expect to time it perfectly, but when I get pretty good executions like I did on NNDM, I just couldn't be happier. And so I locked in like close to I think 3,100 on this play, which was like probably my best Nasdaq trade in again a few months. So yeah, super happy with that. And besides that, I mean, I think I had one last dip buy in NWBO towards the end of the month, which was right here, like a huge awesome panic, down to $1. Sold pretty quickly. I only think I sold into like 110, rebought a little bit, sold into 115, even though it did go to like 140. But again, these bounces are not my strong suit. Panic dip buying has been my setup that I grew my account with when I first started. But my favorite type of dip buys are the kind of straight down, straight up, whereas this one was much more of a grind. And so that's just never been my strong suit when it comes to dip buying bounces, even though I do make money on them. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Obviously, this would be longer if I was going to go over LKNCY, but I have that other video, so please watch that as well. But yeah, so, like I said, when you're in these slower fall months and you're given two great supernovas like NWBO, like LKNCY, I'm taking advantage, right? And I'm really pushing my limits and really pushing the envelope to take bigger risks and accept those bigger risks and have much better, well thought out trade plans. And when that happens, and I execute well and I really pull it all together, it comes out being 90% of my month. That doesn't take away any of the fact from all these other smaller trades, but it just comes out to the fact that deep down, what's going to be the big, money maker and account moving setups and trades. It's when these great plays come around, and it's not any one particular trade. It's not like I'm not saying that my first red day short on both those supernovas were all I needed to trade, but the breakout on NWBO, the reshort on LKNCY, the other dip buy on NWBO, all those little trades added up together on what is such a great setup of a supernova, is what adds up, right? And that's the important part, and that's what is really important in these slower months. I'm kind of a broken record at this point, but you guys get it, So great to see that in October. Again, going into November, no expectations. We're going to see what happens. Just going to keep trading my best, keep doing my best, and hopefully, once we get to December, we will probably pick up again. That certainly was the case last year, where for multiple months I only made, not only, but I was only pulling 5,000, 4,000 4,000. And typically my average month this year on 2019 was like more closer to like 8, 9, and 10, or in like 7 range. So I was wondering, like, when are we going to pick up again? When are we going to, leave the slow summer trading, fall trading? And usually that comes around December, because as you can see here in December, I had a great $10,000 month. And then we jumped right back into 2020, where I come out with, January, a $20,000 January, $20,000 February. And then you just keep escalating for there, 23,000, 32,000, or 26,000. There's 32. And then having huge big months in June and July of 70,000 plus. And so that's typically the trend that I see in my trading, where, right, it speeds up December, January, February, March, April, slows down to the summer, and then into the fall, and then we speed it back again into the winter. So we will see how November goes. Hopefully, we'll then start speeding up into December, and with like holiday trading and Christmas and Thanksgiving. So again, we'll just see how it goes. Take it day by day, trade by trade, and I'm just gonna keep growing. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you guys.